Hello everyone, Tay Fansick, and I realize I haven't posted a video in quite some time. That's just because I've been pretty busy with other stuff, and I've updated my computer, so hopefully there should be no hissing noise in the background. Um, and also no much delayed when I actually talk, because I realize I could tend to go a mile a minute, and with my old videos it was not catching up with me. I don't know what that was about. But anyway, there is one thing that I wanted to talk about, and first and foremost, if you guys have any topics that you guys want to discuss or anything like that, please comment them below or send me some sort of message on one of my social media pages, which is all accessible through the main YouTube page, through the channel, not the main YouTube page. I don't make that much money. Wish I did. But one of the main things I wanted to talk about is I'm starting to get really back into the old Star Trek episodes, and my family and I are getting really addicted to the newer movies, which there's supposed to be a newer one coming out this year. So here's hoping, because Simon Pegg and J.J. Abrams working to write something together. Just Simon Pegg in general is marvelous. So I always look forward to seeing his work. But a lot of fuss has been made about the Star Wars movies. And I'm not going to say anything bad about Star Wars. Don't worry about that. This isn't a hate video. Because I do have some respect for the Star Wars storyline. I really do. I just get disappointed that Star Trek is kind of left in the dust with the whole thing, and everyone's just like, well, Star Wars is way cooler. Let me explain exactly the difference between Star Trek and Star Wars, just in case anybody is confused. Star Wars is mainly for people that like, they call it hard sci-fi. There's soft sci-fi and then there's hard sci-fi, for those of you that didn't know. And what hard sci-fi is that it's the more technical view of science fiction. Like, they discuss a lot of like how ships work, how the computers are maintained, things like that. Soft sci-fi is more focused on emotional development, character development, things of that sort. So there's some contrast there. Not to say that Star Wars doesn't do character work, and not to say that Star Trek doesn't do anything that's technical, because if you watch the old episodes and, you know, even the newer stuff, it's very clear that there's elements in both of those. With Star Wars, though, there's a lot of focus on things that are not necessarily just character development. What Star Wars is a main focus on is politics. And there's also a lot of... Actually, I'm going to leave that point out just in case. But the main thing is politics. Like, these guys are in power. They don't want them to be in power, have to work that whole system to get things in the order that a way it's supposed to be, so everyone has a say, everyone, it's a fair playing ground. Now with Star Trek, it's mostly about exploration, things of that sort, and the main thing is that it's very easy to get into it because it is really about diversity and a welcoming atmosphere. Star Wars is mostly brute force and a kind of philosophy that a lot of people can't really get in touch with. Now, Star Trek, on the other hand, for those of you that don't know, it was the first aired interracial kiss ever done on TV, so that was a huge thing to move forward in. George Takei, when he came out openly gay, his agent actually told him not to because he might lose fans, but people respected him even more because it seemed to follow that whole thing with the Star Trek. I'm going to take this off because of the glare. It fit with the whole thing with the actual Star Trek fandom and way of thinking, which is you're allowed to be different. You're allowed to be gay or straight. You're allowed to be a man or a woman. You're allowed to be black or white. You know, there's no real thing to follow, whereas in Star Wars you kind of get this whole feeling of there has to be a strict set of rules to follow, such as with Anakin Skywalker. When he became completely burned, they just completely covered him up. There was no accepting of it, and everyone just seemed to ignore it after that, like it wasn't even acknowledged anymore, just the fact that he was in that suit. And I realized it was a drive into the plot, so don't get me wrong about that. It was really cool to see how they worked with that, but I don't know, it just has an entirely different atmosphere where it's just mostly brute force. Now, here's the point that I wanted to make initially, is that working in retail, and I'm sure a lot of you that don't even work in retail have seen the rise in Star Wars merchandise. Now, this has been consistent ever since the fandom was created. And I have nothing against Star Wars. Like, when I was little, I used to have a plushie of C-3PO and R2-D2. And I used to have a giant poster of Chewbacca. So I'm not gonna, I can't see, go against any Star Wars fandom or merchandise of that sort. The thing that really gets me is that there's a ton of Star Trek merchandise, but when the movies were coming out, there was no, you know what I mean? There was no publicity like it is with Star Wars. And yes, it's risen dramatically since Disney owns Star Wars now, and Disney puts out a lot of merchandise for a lot of movies, mostly Frozen anymore. But I don't know, it just kind of makes me sad to think that something that motivated so many different people, and something that is so welcoming and shows like all these different messages of like existing with one another without destroying each other. I don't know, it's a little weird to me that we promote brute force in politics a lot more than we do any enlightenment of any sort, is what I'm getting to. So what I would like to do is have this video reposted as much as possible to try and get the fandom a little bit more recognized, to try and get the old Star Trek, the originals, and the newer movies, to try and get them out there further, because I know a lot of people would really appreciate them. And honestly, there's a lot of hurt people out there that a lot of these stories could really help. Now, there's lessons to be learned, no matter what age you are, and it's not one of those shows where it's just, oh, keep them away from this individual, because even the more adult episodes are, relatively tame and friendly. And for those of you who don't know what I mean, they're pretty much all listed on Netflix, so please go have a look. So far, the Charlie X episode has got to be one of my favorites. But that was the main thing I really wanted to get off my chest. And chances are, now that my computer is working a little bit better, I'll be posting a bit more video as soon as I, get up the courage to post some of the things that I actually do want to post, which is mostly stuff with books, monologues, things of that sort. So I might even do a separate channel, sorry, getting over sickness, a separate channel involving some debatable humor. So feel free to keep a lookout for that. Anyway, have a nice time, you guys, and I'll talk to you next video.